So I'm moving these chicks, they're a week old, to the brooder in the garage. And this little chick, which I'm thinking is going to turn out brassy back, was born with splayed legs where they kind of kick out towards the sides. Makes it hard for the chick to walk. Well, this right here is what I did to remedy that. I just very loosely put a zip tie around each leg, and then I linked them together with 2 more zip ties, and I did this so that I could draw them in to where I felt they would be back in line with where they should be. Now that the chick is a week old, I'm going to snip these off with a pair of wire cutters and put him with the rest of the chicks in his group, as I feel he should do okay now. When I was a kid, if we had a chick like this, what we would do is we would tie the legs together using sewing thread, but it's hard to see what you're doing and trying to tie a nice knot in that thread, so I kind of prefer this method. There's some other methods out there, but this is just one of the things that I do. I'm in the process of moving chicks today. Probably finish up tomorrow. So I've got the 2 oldest sets in the outside brooders, and then down here I've got the 3rd set of Polish and the 3rd set of Games and Bantams, and then this bunch here is the 4th set of Games and Bantams. This bunch just got put in. They are the 5th set of Games. And over here is the 4th set of Polish. These guys are just trying to figure out what's going on out here. Everybody else is pretty used to the routine. Eventually I will split up the Bantams and the Games. Of course, I always keep my Polish separate. I just put them in this brooder today. The oldest group of Games got moved to a 10 by 12. So these guys got put over here. And then this brooder here is Group 1's Polish. You can see them down there. And of course on Group 2 I didn't have a very good hatch because I screwed up with the incubator, basically. This is Group 1's Bantams. So eventually there's one single Bantam that's in with the Group 2 Polish. Eventually it will end up with these guys. I've got Group 6 hatching as we speak. And then I've got Group 7 after that. And then Springer, if you see this, I sent you an email. I know you're busy this time of year, but I've got some eggs that I would be willing to hook up your kid with. If I don't hear out of you, and by Monday I'll probably put them in the incubator, and that'll be the last bunch. Check these suckers out. Pretty excited about these hollyhocks coming up like that. Got a whole bunch of different colors. And that one especially, I mean, it's gotta be, man, how tall is that? Well, if I were to stand next to that window, that center divide there would probably be above my head. You can see how tall that thing is. But let's go for a little walk, because I wanted to talk about shipping. As you can see, I've got a decent crop of chicks this year. I'll do a roundup on my hatching at the end of the season, just like I did last year. But here's kind of the dilemmas we've got. Number one, advertising the birds. So the go-to for a lot of people at this point on advertising their birds is Facebook. And I've commented in some recent videos about how on Facebook it's their policy that you cannot sell animals. It's a private company, they can do what they want. Not much you can do about it. Well, recently it has been found out, not through Facebook, because they're trying to keep it quiet, I reckon, but some stock has been sold, from what I hear, to PETA. So now PETA has a say in what goes on Facebook. Basically, this came about because Facebook's got that thing where if something's gory, it blurs out the image and then it gives you the option of if you want to see it or not. Well, they didn't like that because it prevented people from seeing the images and the propaganda that they wanted to show everybody. So they decided to buy in. And whether that's technically legal or not, from my understanding it isn't, but there ain't a whole lot we're going to do about it. I don't know if you can see them little guys down there. Got us a nice crop of runner ducklings. But, where was I going with that? Yeah, so it's getting even more strict on Facebook. Well, a lot of people are switching over to MeWe. Well, that's all fine and well, but as I've said before, MeWe doesn't have near the audience, and if the only people who are there are people who deal with livestock, then our message gets lost to people who don't have any clue about them. See where I'm going? And YouTube's getting more strict by the minute too. There's some other platforms, and I've noticed it since I've made the few mentions that I have, that it seems maybe a little more than coincidence, but my viewing percentages has gone down on my videos, and I think that's because the algorithms are not promoting stuff as hard or what have you. Basically, they're like, oh, this guy's saying things we don't want people to hear, so we're not gonna just outright tell him to stop because he's not really being aggressive to it, but we're gonna ding him a little bit, you know, set him back just a minute. And I'm looking at maybe starting a channel on a alternative website, but again, I don't think it's right to just abandon YouTube completely. So if I do that, I'm going to upload the same content on both platforms. Okay? And maybe, who knows, I'll be able to sell things through video on there as opposed to Facebook. The next thing that we got going on is the shipping. Now, the post office has changed the rules on the shipping boxes and how you price out the shipping. So, it's basically doubled. $52 box is now over $100 to ship. $120 for a trio is now over $300. And what they did is they now go by weight and total cubic inches. Excuse me. So, what's going to happen there? Well, box companies obviously are working on redesigning the boxes. I don't know if you can see them quail down there. So they're working on redesigning their boxes, but the problem is I'm seeing a lot of people cutting down boxes and saying, hey, do this, it comes out to the required space. Now those short boxes, they'll probably work for young birds and pigeons and bantams. The problem I have is the way that people are cutting them down. I don't feel like a full-grown, large fowl bird will be able to stand up and sit down as it wishes in transit, and that can cause all kinds of problems. So while people are thinking they're clever and they're doing some kind of short-term solution, what I see is the potential for a lot of complaints of birds arriving dead, or birds that are not in the best health and don't recover because of this. And maybe I'm just being paranoid, but that's kind of what it feels like to me. My mom took her Phoenix to a show in a Mexican style carrying case, which is meant for short-term travel. Well, the reason we used it is because it allowed the tails of the males to not be trampled by the roosters, and those tails were at least 4 foot long. It worked okay when she hauled them to my place, took them out of the boxes, and then overnighted them in larger cages, and then we loaded them back up the next morning. But when she left the show, she loaded them up in there, took them out for like maybe an hour at my place, and then loaded them back up and went home. And when she went home, because of the cramped conditions of that style of box, she had some real issues with the legs of her males. It'd be like having a cramp or sitting on your leg for hours on end and then having no way to correct that. So that's the kind of thing that I see becoming a problem if they decide to go with these boxes that are shorter in height. So that's, in a nutshell, what's going on. There's going to be a lot of people who are not sure how and where to sell. Of course, Craigslist, you could sell there, but people flag posts all the time. And Facebook's taking down posts and shutting people's pages down and that kind of thing. YouTube, I haven't really seen a clear answer on whether or not you can actually sell things on there. So far, it seems like you can make videos of things that are for sale with contact information. There's the oldest bunch of games. So it remains to be seen. The fact of the matter is, as much as we would like to think of these platforms as being a global town square, they are, in fact, private entities. And they can do what they want. So what does this mean? Well, I think in the short term, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to try and get businesses going or do it on the down low of hauling birds, which, you know, it's not like people don't haul birds for each other. It happens. It's pretty common. But I think that the amount is going to go up. And it could be a thing where all of a sudden people start getting searched for that in traffic stops. Especially if they're coming from quarantined areas or things like that. I know some men fled. I don't remember what the details were, but there was a car that was pulled over in Colorado, and the people who were in the car got away, but they found that it was clear full of game roosters, and they did take them to a humane society or something, some shelter or something of some sort. And when I say humane society, I'm not talking the HSUS. They don't do anything in terms of having actual shelters. But your local shelter is what I'm getting at. So anyway, they held the birds, hoping someone would come forward and claim them. Well, if they ran, they were either, one, up to no good, or two, afraid of being pinned as being up to no good. And even if you're innocent, are you going to walk into something that you think is a trap? Well, neither did these guys. So the birds, as far as I know, ended up being euthanized. I also think that there's going to be an uptick in birds being sold in local auctions and birds being sold in fairs and shows, things like that. So in that respect, it might help to boost the local interest. But then the question there becomes, how long is that going to last? And the other thing is, which I think the gamefowl community would actually be okay with, is there's going to be a lot of guys who breed just to sell. They don't try to improve their bloodlines or anything like that. They just crank them out as fast as they can so they can sell them. And as a result, they're going to have a whole bunch of birds that they're going to have more difficulty selling, because all of a sudden nobody's going to want to pay their shipping prices. And they're going to say, you know what, financially this isn't worth it, I'm out. I'm not saying a person can't make money doing it. All I'm saying is it'll thin out a certain percentage of breeders. So it's going to get real interesting real quick to see how things pan out. Personally, as much as I'd like to ship, the fact is it's going to come down to, are you willing to pay the shipping? Because I'm not paying the shipping. If I were to ship a pair at the same price that I did this spring for a flat, all-included shipping and everything, I'd basically be giving the pair away. And if I was financially secure to where I had a whole bunch of zeros behind the number in my bank account, I wouldn't have a problem with that. I'd rather, to be perfectly honest, I'm not a fan of selling my birds. I know I raise a lot, and I know I do sell them. But if it was up to me, my primary goal when I set up a brood pen isn't to produce 500 roosters to sell in the fall. I'm breeding select pairs to try and better what I already have on the farm. And then once I go through those birds, the ones that didn't make the cut end up being the ones that get sold. Had to shut the camera off for a minute there and take a phone call, but check this out. We got our first quail eggs. So, basically, like I said, it's going to be real interesting this next 12 to 18 months to see how things turn around. I guess the only other things I have to say on the subject of shipping and buying and selling is it seems to me like a lot of people put a lot of effort into finding ways around regulations. And I've never really understood that, because to me, all that does is cause more regulations. Okay, fine, you found a loophole that worked for 12 months. Well, then they close the loophole. Well, then you find another loophole, and then they close that one, and so on and so forth. I just can't understand why sometimes it seems like everybody's so eager to find a workaround instead of putting all that energy and time into reversing a law. And I understand reversing a law is not easy, or a regulation, or what have you. But isn't it better to try and reverse it than it is to continually feel like you're on the run and continually trying to stay one step ahead of everything? I mean, sooner or later you will run out of options. That's just the sad truth of things. I guess before I wrap this up, I just want to say a couple things real quick. Terry at Hidden Hollow, I think what you did for your buddy Dave was really admirable. And if you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. I'm sure he's smiling down at you for it. The man down south, I want to say from Alabama, who messaged me his phone number asking about some Morgans. I believe I took a screenshot of your phone number because your comment is no longer there. I will get a hold of you once I decide when to start letting go of some. And to the man who offered to send my wife some homing pigeon eggs, again, your comment, it's there, and then I go to reply to it and it's no longer there. So it's another one of those situations where comments just magically disappear on YouTube. But I did bring it up to her. She said to thank you and say that that's a very kind offer, but since she's so new to the birds, she wants to just focus on her one pair for now. So everybody have a good one. I'm going inside where there's no mosquitoes.